All right, so picture this. You're at Jimmy Carter's funeral, right?
Okay.
It's somber,
Yeah.
historic event. You've got all these dignitaries and family members.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you got two former presidents.
Okay.
Very, very different styles.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with this.
Barack Obama and Donald Trump.
Oh, boy.
What do you think goes on in those quiet moments between them?
It is fascinating how we just immediately jump to this assumption of tension, right?
Right.
Like there's this unspoken rivalry that's still just simmering beneath the surface.
Totally.
I mean, obviously presidential etiquette, there's a certain level of decorum at these types of events.
Of course.
But the public imagination just runs wild with what might be happening behind those polite smiles.
It's like we can't resist trying to read between the lines, or in this case,
Right.
trying to read lips.
Oh, yeah.
Remember all those lip-reading jokes that went viral online?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Imagining these hilarious exchanges between them.
I mean, those jokes tap into our perceptions of their personalities
Highly.
and their legacies.
Yeah.
They take those perceived differences and just crank them up to 11 for comedic effect.
Okay, so let's dive into some specific examples.
Okay.
One scenario imagines them comparing their legacies.
Okay.
Obama, known for his eloquence, might say something like,
Right.
history will judge my presidency favorably.
And then you have Trump, never one to shy away from self-promotion.
Right.
Countering with, oh, they'll remember mine too, the biggest, the best, the most talked about.
Yeah.
It plays on that classic Trumpian tendency to boast,
Right.
always needing to be the center of attention.
Is it really boasting, though, if it's true?
Well,
I mean, some might say he had a point about being the most talked about.
that's the clever part, right?
Yeah.
These jokes work because they are rooted in some grain of truth.
Yeah.
Even if it's exaggerated for comedic effect. Trump's need for affirmation, his constant self-promotion, it's all part of his brand of populism.
Totally.
He connects with a segment of the population who feel ignored by the establishment.
Right.
But by contrasting him with Obama's more understated approach, the joke highlights their drastically different styles of leadership.
And the punchline really drives that point home, right?
Oh, yeah.
Obama comes back with this perfectly timed jab.
Okay.
Talked about doesn't mean admire Donald.
You can practically hear his signature chuckle in that line.
He uses their own words
Right.
and perceived personalities to highlight those contrasting approaches to leadership.
Exactly.
Obama's known for his wit and intellect,
Yeah.
and that line is delivered with a subtle dig.
Yeah.
That's both funny and insightful. Makes you wonder what's really going through their minds in that moment.
That is the question.
Okay, this next one has to do with food.
All right.
And I think everyone listening knows where this is going.
Okay.
We all know Trump's love of fast food, right?
Yes, we do.
So picture this.
Okay.
Trump leans over during the reception and whispers,
Right.
bet there's no McDonald's at this thing.
And Obama, ever the picture of health-conscious living,
Right.
might reply with something like, you're right, but I'm sure there's kale care to share.
Yeah.
Again, it's a clash of personalities and preferences,
Yeah.
playing on those well-known stereotypes.
Yeah. What makes it even funnier is that both of the stereotypes have a basis in reality.
Right?
There are countless articles about Obama's healthy eating habits
Yeah.
and Trump's love of fast food.
Exactly. These jokes wouldn't land if they didn't have some connection to our existing perceptions of these figures.
Right.
Remember that time when Trump served fast food to a visiting college football team at the White House?
Oh, yeah.
It became a whole news cycle.
I remember that. Remember the hamburgers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of memorable moments,
Okay.
let's move on to some of those awkward encounters they've had in the past.
Those incidents that are just ripe for comedic fodder? Like imagine Trump saying, bet you're glad we're sitting this far apart. The media would have a field day.
And Obama, never one to miss a beat, could fire back with, as long as they don't catch us on the same golf course again.
Right.
Of course, that's a reference to that time.
Yeah.
They were photographed golfing together,
Right.
which made headlines because it seemed so unexpected,
Totally.
given their political differences.
It was back in 2017
Yeah,
before things really heated up between them.
yeah.
For those who may not remember, there was all this speculation about whether they actually enjoyed each other's company
Right.
or if it was just for show.
Yeah, that's what's so brilliant about these jokes.
Totally.
They remind us of those real-life moments,
Right.
those snippets of history that add another layer of meaning to the humor.
Yeah.
It's like we're reliving those events through these imagined conversations.
It's like watching a very polite,
Yes.
very passive-aggressive tennis match, but with jokes instead of volleys.
And we, the audience, get to be the referees,
Right.
deciding which shots land best.
So we've talked about legacies, food, awkward encounters. But what about those moments of unlikely bonding?
Right.
Is there any scenario where these two might actually find common ground?
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a fleeting second?
That's where it gets really interesting. Well, one joke imagines them reflecting on their shared experience. You know?
Yeah.
You have Trump saying something like, you know, Barack, we've both been in the spotlight. We've both made history.
Right.
It's almost a genuine moment of reflection, you know, acknowledging the unique position they both occupied.
And knowing Obama, he'd probably respond with something that acknowledges their common ground,
Right.
while also subtly highlighting their differences.
Right.
Maybe something like, true, but history will likely remember us very differently.
Exactly. It's a clever way to inject both humor and a dose of reality into the situation.
Right.
They might have shared the office, but their approaches and their impact were undeniably distinct.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, the contrast between their presidencies is a big part of what makes these imagined conversations so fascinating.
Right. It's like deep down, we all want to know how they really feel about each other.
Yeah.
Especially given how divided the country became during their respective terms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about more than just the jokes. It's about understanding the complex dynamics between these two figures
Right.
who represent such different ideologies and approaches to leadership.
Of course, leave it to Trump to bring it back to himself.
Of course.
Another scenario has him saying, when I go, my funeral is going to be huge, the biggest in history.
Well, it wouldn't be a Trumpian joke without some hyperbole, would it?
Right.
That kind of over-the-top statement is part of what makes him so polarizing, but also so entertaining.
Totally.
You know, some find it offensive while others see it as harmless bravado.
It definitely keeps things interesting, and I can just imagine Obama's response. Something witty and subtly cutting, like, if it's anything like your inauguration, Donald, I'll save you a seat at mine.
It's a lighthearted jab, but it also references the controversy surrounding the crowd size at Trump's inauguration.
Right.
Which was a flashpoint in the early days of his presidency.
Right.
That's what I love about these jokes. They often allude to real-world events.
Yeah.
Which adds another layer of meaning for those who remember the controversy that lands even harder.
Right.
It's a subtle reminder of the tension and the starkly different narratives that define their presidencies.
Do you think there's any chance, even the slightest chance, that these guys ever look back on those days and actually miss sparring with each other? Like, it's got to be a little lonely at the top, right?
It's an interesting question. I mean, they both clearly thrive on attention and engagement, albeit in very different ways.
Right.
Maybe there's a part of them that misses that constant back and forth, that feeling of being at the center of the political universe.
Okay, this next one is pure gold. Imagine them debating who Carter liked more.
Okay.
Trump, in all his confidence, declares, I'm telling you, Carter liked me best. He loved winners.
Well, on the surface, it's a classic Trumpian boast.
Right.
But if you look deeper, it reveals a lot about his worldview. You know,
Right.
Trump equates success with winning, with being on top.
Yeah.
It's a very transactional view of relationships and influence.
And what about Obama?
Oh.
How do you imagine him responding to that claim?
I can see Obama with a knowing smile saying something like, Donald Carter literally won a Nobel Peace Prize. I'm pretty sure that's the opposite of your brand.
Wow.
It's a brilliant way to highlight their contrasting ideologies, pitting Carter's focus on peace and diplomacy against Trump's more aggressive, self-serving approach.
It's amazing how one line can encapsulate their entire political philosophies.
Yeah.
It's like the joke becomes this microcosm of their larger political battle.
That's the power of satire.
Yeah.
It takes complex issues and distills them into these bite-sized, digestible moments that make us laugh while also making us think.
All right, one last scenario before we wrap up this imaginary funeral banter.
Okay.
Imagine Trump, ever the businessman, trying to pitch Obama a book idea.
Okay.
He might say something like, hey, Barack, we should co-author a book, 2 Presidents, 1 Country, guaranteed bestseller.
And Obama, with a perfectly timed eye roll, could reply, sure, as long as the subtitle is what not to do.
It's a hilarious way to poke fun at Trump's often questionable decisions, while also highlighting Obama's more measured and thoughtful approach.
Yeah.
It's the perfect ending to our imagined conversation, leaving us with a final chuckle and a lot to ponder.
Indeed. These jokes, while lighthearted and entertaining, offer a fascinating glimpse into how we perceive our leaders and the dynamics that might exist between them, even in the most formal settings.
So we've had some fun imagining these conversations, but What does it all mean?
Right.
Why are we so fascinated by these behind-the-scenes moments, even in the context of something as serious as a funeral?
That's a great question, and it leads us to a deeper dive into the psychology behind our political humor.
Yeah, it's like we're constantly trying to decode their body language,
Yeah.
analyze their every word, searching for those unguarded moments
Yeah,
that reveal what they're really thinking.
totally.
I think it speaks to our desire to humanize
Yeah.
these larger-than-life figures.
Yeah.
Presidents, especially in today's media-saturated world, are often presented as these carefully constructed personas.
Right.
But deep down, we know they're just people
Mhm.
with flaws,
Yeah.
quirks,
Right.
and, yes, maybe even a sense of humor.
And these jokes, even if they're completely made up, allow us to imagine them in those more relatable human moments.
Yeah.
Like we're peeking behind the curtain and seeing them not just as presidents, but as two guys navigating a complex social situation.
And that act of imagining, of creating these scenarios can be incredibly revealing.
Right.
It tells us a lot about our own perceptions of these figures.
Yeah. The things we admire about them, the things we find frustrating, and the things that simply make us laugh.
So it's not just about entertainment.
Right.
It's about understanding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These jokes are like little social experiments.
Oh, I thought that.
Reflecting our collective understanding of power politics and the personalities that shape our world, they allow us to grapple with these complex ideas in a way that's both engaging and thought-provoking.
I love that.
Before we go further, just want to pause to give special thanks to our sponsors Palak, Shah from RDSP Investments. Thank you for your generous support in making this podcast possible. Soundamax.com, official podcast microphone sponsor. We're grateful to Soundamax.com for the premium Levator microphones, seamlessly connecting to Android and iPhone, requiring no extra apps, and delivering crystal clear audio up to 65 feet. Studio quality sound under $80. Use coupon code PODCAST for an exclusive discount. FireXBlanket.com, co-sponsor. Control small home fires quickly with the Fire Blanket, reusable solution under $30. Visit their website and use coupon code PODCAST for a special discount. Thank you to all our sponsors for your incredible support.
It's like we're all armchair psychologists
Yeah.
analyzing their every word and gesture, even if those words and gestures are purely fictional.
Right.
And who knows, maybe some of these imagined scenarios are closer to reality than we think.
That's the beauty of it all. We'll never know for sure what was said in those private moments, but that uncertainty just fuels our curiosity and allows our imaginations to run wild.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into presidential humor, I had a challenge for you, dear listener.
Okay.
Imagine you're a fly on the wall at Carter's funeral.
Okay.
What snippet of conversation do you overhear between Obama and Trump? It can be funny, insightful, or even a little bit heartwarming.
And as you're crafting that conversation, think about this. What does your version of their interaction reveal about your understanding of these two figures and their place in our political landscape? Sometimes the most revealing stories are the ones we create ourselves.
That's it for our deep dive this week. Make sure to tune in next time for more fascinating conversations about the things that make us think and the things that make us laugh.